The child trembles beneath a threadbare blanket, eyes wide in the dark. She dares not move. Outside the covers, it waits breathing, watching. The boogeyman will get you, whispers a voice once meant to protect. You've heard it before. We all have. A shadow in the closet, a creak on the stairs, a promise whispered by tired parents to still restless limbs. But what if it wasn't just a story? What if this fear wasn't childish imagination, but inheritance? From dusty cradles in Poland to flickering hearths in Ghana, from Japanese mountainsides to Appalachian cabins, nearly every culture whispers the same name in different tongues. A monster, a punisher, a thief of disobedient children. Why? Why does this figure haunt our collective memory? Tonight we follow that shadow. Not just across borders, but backward through centuries, through millennia, into a darkness 6,000 years deep. In the soft lamplight of suburban bedrooms, the boogeyman lingers as a whispered warning. He is invoked casually, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a note of stern finality. Go to bed, or the boogeyman will come for you. To a child, the words fall like a spell. The emptiness beneath the bed stops being empty, the closet's cracked door becomes a mouth, and every settling groan of the house suggests a step on the stairs. Parents, exhausted, mean only to tame chaos. For them, the boogeyman is a tool, an intangible deputy who keeps order when patience thins. For the child, he is as real as breathing. He is consequence made flesh. Faceless yet certain, hovering at the edge of sleep. In the modern West, he is shapeless by design. And that is his strength. He might crouch under the mattress, waiting for dangling feet, or press his forehead to the window glass to fog a warning circle in the night. He might be nothing more than a deepened patch of black in the corner of the room, there and not there, the mind doing the rest. The formlessness invites collaboration. Each child supplies the features they most dread. To some, he is tall and skeletal. To others, a low, crawling smear with eyes like damp coal. Because he is not fixed. He cannot be dislodged. Because he lacks a face. He can wear any face the dark provides. Regional flavors only widen his reach. In one American story, he lives under the bed, fingers like copper wire waiting to snag an ankle. Elsewhere, he is a night stalker who peers through uncurtained windows for wakeful eyes. In older British whispers, he lurks in alleys, more man than monster, waiting for children who wander. In German echoes of the Boogeyman, he is less a person than a pressure in the room, a haunting that belongs to the hour itself. Change the accent, shift the scenery, and the lesson remains. The dark has teeth, and obedience is a light. Certain traits persist, no matter the telling. He arrives with night and silence. He thrives in thresholds under beds, behind doors, between waking and dream. His jurisdiction is childhood, and his authority is fear. Parents borrow his shadow to draw boundaries. Stay in bed. Stay inside. Stay safe. The child cannot know the survival logic beneath the threat. They only feel the immediacy of doom. Yet even stripped of parental intent, he refuses to fade. He migrates into movies and playground dares, into slumber party tales and internet creepypasta. Culture keeps lighting him from new angles and calling him by new names, but the shadow remains the subject, not the lamp. That universality is the first real clue. Why is the figure always nocturnal? Why are children always the quarry? Why do the rules rhyme across regions? Stay close. Keep quiet. Don't wander or else. Coincidence thins under the weight of repetition. The familiar shadow begins to look like a fragment of something older we keep picking up without realizing it. We tell ourselves he is just a disciplinary ghost conjured by tired adults, and then the same ghost speaks Spanish, Russian, Akan, Japanese, and still understands us. What parents call the boogeyman is likely only the newest mask for a force with a memory longer than any bedtime. So the question sharpens. If this darkness is not merely a local tale but a human one, what truth does it conceal? What inheritance, older than language, makes different households chant the same warnings in different tongues? To answer, we must let the lamps go out and listen for echoes that predate houses, streetlights, even cities. The trail leads beyond the familiar bedroom into forests that begin at the edge of the fire. Across the world, in cultures divided by oceans and centuries, the boogeyman wears different masks and keeps the same appointment with night. His names change, his work does not. To understand him, we travel by story hearth to hearth, language to language, collecting faces that feel, in some unsettling way, like family. In Spain and Latin America, children are warned of El Coco, a sack shape of shadow who steals wakeful children. Parents sing lullabies that threaten more than soothe, promising he listens from the roof. Sometimes he's eyeless and all mouth. Sometimes he is only an absence that takes a shape when called. The command is simple: sleep or be taken. In the Slavic forest steps Baba Yaga, vivid where El Coco is vague. Her hut stands on chicken legs, her fence is bone, her mortar and pestle grind both miles and children. She devours the foolish and rewards the clever. Terror and initiation folded into one figure. In her, the boogeyman becomes judge as well as monster, the test that burns away childishness like chaff. Far to the northeast, Japanese winters crackle with the tread of the Namahage. Straw-cloaked men in oni masks hammer at doors each new year, their guttural demands rattling bowls and nerves. Any lazy children here? Any who disobey? Tears are part of the ritual. So is the promise to improve. The boogeyman here is performed into the room, a living ceremony that leaves footprints on floors and on memory. In the Caribbean, the figure splinters into jumbies and duen. The duen souls of unbaptized children wander with backward feet and blank faces, luring the living young into the bush. Fear in these stories enforces right as much as rule. Neglect the ritual, and risk the child becoming what you fear. Across West Africa, tales like Ghana's Sasabon Sam set iron-toothed predators in the trees, legs dangling like snares for wanderers. Elsewhere, the night itself is populated by restless ancestors who reclaim the careless. Here, the boogeyman is indistinguishable from wilderness. The forest edge is his mouth, the rustling grass his whisper. Parents need only nod toward the dark and let the night speak the rest. Despite their different costumes, the choreography matches. Night, thresholds, children, punishment. He polices borders bed to floor, house to road, village to brush, and teaches with terror where a fence or law cannot reach. The tales do practical work. Keep the little ones close, keep them alive. But there is also the unnerving sameness of theme and tone, a harmony across distance that outlives trade and empire. Fear of dark and teeth, of being taken for breaking rules that guard survival. These are not the inventions of one people. They read like a memory shared before we drifted apart. When the same shadow is humming in Spanish lullabies, Slavic witch songs, Japanese festival thunder, and Akan warnings by the fire, the question ripens: how old is this thing we keep reinventing? Folklore provides the faces. Prehistory may explain the bones beneath them. To find those, we must step away from stories and into the archaeology of fear. Long before El Coco's lullabies, before Baba Yaga's bone fence or Namahage's roaring visits, the boogeyman's outline flickered in firelight. Imagine a circle of Neolithic families around a meagre blaze. Children press close. The dark beyond the ring breathes and shifts. Branches snap. Eyes watch. A parent leans in and murmurs a warning, not as metaphor but as map. Do not cross the border of light. Some called it spirits, some beasts. The lesson was the same: hold the line. Or the night will take you. Archaeology leaves hints like footprints in ash. Cave walls sketch hybrid shapes at the edges of hunting scenes, as if the kill was being watched by something not quite animal. Stone talismans with bulging eyes, clay faces with gaping mouths, miniature guardians buried beneath thresholds, artifacts positioned where dark meets domestic. Child burials clasp amulets meant to ward whatever stalked the hours after dusk. Later, when writing scratches the air into cuneiform and hieroglyph, Sumerian and Egyptian texts speak of prowlers in shadow demons of fever, wilderness, and night who carry off the unguarded. The continuity is difficult to ignore. Liminal creatures, punitive darkness, the peril of children. Before walls and lanterns, Night was an apex predator. Wolves, snakes, lions, starving strangers, everything that hunted preferred the cover you could not see into. A single misstep, a few feet beyond the fire, could erase a child without witness. A rule dressed as a story survives both better and longer than a shouted order. Fear, properly aimed, is a reliable shepherd. Rituals show how fear was engineered. Across early settlements, thresholds bristled with charms, hearths with carved watchers, door lintels with painted eyes. Masks mattered most. In rites of passage, adults wore faces of bark and horn and bone, becoming the very terrors they warned of, collapsing the distance between threat and teacher. Some scholars read these ceremonies as the skeletal ancestors of the Boogeyman, living incarnations of punishment meant to cauterize disobedience before it killed. As cities swell and myths accumulate, the pattern simply proliferates. Sumer lists night stalkers by name. Egypt maps chaos beings just beyond the ordered world. Greece assigns the task to Mormo and Lamia. Change the pantheon and the climate. The job description persists. He patrols the line between safety and unmaking, and drags back the small and the foolish who cross it. Most haunting of all are graves that complicate grief with ritual. Archaeologists uncover children interred apart, bound or protected with special objects. Predator? Plague? Or something chosen by human hands? Whatever the cause, the story, communities told afterward, would have shape-shifted into memory they could carry. Someone or something took the child. The Boogeyman is, in this reading, a fossil of danger and an exoskeleton of sorrow. Strip away the millennia and the scene repeats. A child curls beneath a blanket, imagining a presence under the bed. Another clung to a parent's leg when the forest pressed close. 2 rooms, 1 fear. We inherit not just genes but instruction. The pressure of boundaries taught so often they became instinct. The endurance of the Boogeyman is less a failure to modernize than a success of design. He does what he was made to do, but a darker pivot waits. If the first Boogeymen were masks, worn by nature wolves, ravines, cold, what happens when people learn to wear the masks better than nature does? If fear trains obedience, what keeps hands from wielding it? The next step in the shadow's evolution leaves the forest edge and sits by the hearth, where the face behind the warning is uncomfortably human. The Boogeyman is a boundary and a mirror. He guards lines bed from floor, home from dark, child from elsewhere, and he reflects what a culture dreads becoming. His vagueness in Western lore is its own thesis. The monster without a face is fear itself, available to be poured into any shape the moment requires. Psychology gives the mirror a name. Jung's shadow is the sum of what we repress: anger, appetite, defiance, cruelty. We project it outward so we can fight it in story instead of in ourselves. The Boogeyman is that projection ritualized, a controlled burn of chaos. Societies tell children about the thing in the dark, not merely to frighten them, but to draft the unconscious into patrol duty. He becomes the town watchman of the mind, hence the double-edged figures that feel truer than simple monsters. Baba Yaga punishes foolishness and rewards courage, a devourer and a tutor in the same breath. The Duin caution not just against wandering, but against neglecting rites that weld a community together. Even faceless El Coco acquires features as needed, sprouting whatever mouth best fits the moment. In all of them, the shadow functions as law with teeth. Scapegoating bends the mirror until it points away. When crops fail, or children vanish, or sickness moves like night wind, communities reach for a story that condenses panic into a person. Something took them. The sentence is a mercy and a lie. It spares the living from admitting randomness, incompetence, or cruelty, and it hardens into folklore because it feels cleaner than truth. The Boogeyman drinks collective guilt so the group can keep going. He also rules the thresholds that generate awe and anxiety. Closets, attics, tree lines, town limits, midnight. Liminal spaces crackle because categories blur there. The Boogeyman is the human habit of giving that static a face, of treating the dangerous in-between as a guard post manned by a shape that understands only obedience. And yet, a darker answer glints beneath the symbols. If the shadow is the part of us we refuse to acknowledge, then a society that weaponizes the shadow might act it out in daylight and call it sacred. What if some tales of child snatchers do not disguise beasts, but people? What if the threat, "He'll take you," remembers taking? Myths can be attics, where a culture stores what it cannot look at directly. The next door we open groans loudly because it is heavy with history. Follow the shadow far enough and it stops feeling metaphorical. In the archaeological dust and the colder corners of recorded history stand rituals that rhyme too neatly with our stories to ignore. Myths preserve memory. Sometimes they preserve confession. On a bluff above Carthage's ancient harbour, the Tophet holds the cremated remains of thousands of infants and small children. Scholars argue over whether every urn marks sacrifice or some are funerary, but the debate itself reveals a society close enough to the act that the line blurs. In Greek lands, the figure of Lamia, the devourer of children, coexists with histories of infant exposure on crags outside the polis. In the high valleys of Mesoamerica, imperial rites sought rain with offerings of children whose tears were believed to persuade the sky. Different civilizations. Similar grammar. Children taken, pain demanded, order promised in exchange. Later, memory softens the specifics and says instead that a something took them. Scapegoat ceremonies widen the lens. Under the stress of famine, plague, or invasion, communities found relief in selecting a bearer for collective dread. Outsider, animal, criminal, sometimes tragically a child, and expelling or killing that vessel to clean the year. What is a boogeyman but the personalized story you tell afterward, the shadow that eats the fact so the village can sleep? Even the milder rituals retain teeth marks. In Europe's winters, masked figures once rattled chains through alleys, threatening to snatch the disobedient. In Japan, namahage still pound thresholds and bellow names. Today, most of us call it theatre, a memory reenacted for cameras and festivals. But the adrenaline is real. And so is the lesson. Fear is a tool cultures handle with practiced hands. Recognize the pattern and the figure clarifies. The boogeyman is the enforcer of lines where walls are thin and stakes are high. He is born whenever a community decides that obedience must be ensured, if not by kindness, then by dread. That is why he lasts. He is functional. What folklore hides is not only danger from without, but violence from within. It is easier to tell a child that the closet is haunted than to explain what human beings have done in the name of order. Easier to say, a shadow took them, than to look directly at the mask and the hands beneath it. So the stories do double work. They warn and they wash. They keep children near. And they rinse history until only a nighttime shape remains. This does not make every legend a ledger of crimes, but it stains the edges. The boogeyman is boundary and mirror. Yes, but also archive. He records our bargains with fear, the ones we prefer to shelve in attics and sing around instead of read plainly. When parents today murmur, "Go to sleep or he'll come," they repeat an incantation stamped thousands of years ago by fires that needed fuel and gods that needed offerings. So the last secret is the most ordinary and the most unbearable. The monster in the dark endures because we keep using him. He is not a visitor from elsewhere, but a tool within reach. A mask we hang by the door and take down when order trembles. That is why he survives the march of lamps and screens. He belongs to us, and if every culture that tells his story is remembering as well as warning, then each repetition is a faint admission. The boogeyman was never waiting outside the door. He was always sitting by the fire, perfectly patient, until someone needed his name.